Weird times, creepy crimes, and unexplained phenomena. If it's weird and it's in Florida, it's on the SoFlo Weird Show. I'm your host and head weirdo, Mia Laurenzo. If you've ever been torn between good and evil, then you'll surely relate to this episode. It's all about sinners and saints. From the life and crimes of Florida's infamous strippers, to repenting your sins at Daytona Beach's drive-in church, and finally, a look at the true Garden of Eden. Yes, that Garden of Eden, where the first sin originated in Bristol, Florida. For my sinful beginning, I am joined once again by my partner in crime and legal eagle, Chris Mancini, and fellow weirdo, Pilar. Our first case begins with the former notorious prostitute, Kathy Willits, who gained national attention when she was arrested in 1991 for not just what she did, but what her husband did while she entertained her clients.
Well, the part I like about Kathy's story the most is that she was married to a Broward County sheriff. And the Broward County deputy sheriff, and Broward County Sheriff's Office has had a long history of corruption, especially back in the 30s when the sheriff himself was co-owner of all of the gambling joints in Broward County, along with Meyer Lansky, the most famous gangster in the history of America. But that's for another day. Today we're going to talk about Kathy.
That's a typical of South Florida roots.
Well, that's right. Roots is the term, because we have crime deeply embedded right down to our roots, to the point where it upholds many of our so-called honest institutions in this city. And that's why I always find stories like this so interesting. When Kathy Willits was caught, it was because her husband, Jeff, was videotaping her having sex with a politician from the closet of their home. Jeff got bored, fell asleep, and fell out of the closet. The gentleman in question jumped up, put his pants on, and ran out the door and reported what was going on. Now, what Kathy and Jeff had been doing for quite some time was soliciting by different types of articles in different types of low-rent magazines and newspapers. Anybody that was willing to give them fit the bill and was willing to provide them with a business card, because if you didn't send them a business card, they weren't interested. But if you did, and you were a politician or someone of means, you were in. So Kathy was busy having sex with these guys. Jeff was busy videotaping his wife having sex with these guys. And then it all came to light on that occasion. And a guy by the name of Doug Danziger, who was the vice mayor of Fort Lauderdale, got outed. But there was a list of other people, famous wealthy people, all men, of course, from South Florida, who Kathy was threatening to disclose. And she hired an attorney by the name of Ellis Rubin. And then there was a big deal about Rubin having the list and being willing to sell it to Access America or one of those, TV disclosure shows like TMZ is now, but that didn't exist then. And then all this got worse and worse and worse. And as Miami began to stink more and more from the stench, people began to love it more and more and more. Because, there's one line of thought that there's a reason why Miami is the epicenter for all these sex scandals. And we've had tons of sex scandals, is because we want people to come down here and enjoy sex without boundaries. I mean, we've been doing that since the 1930s.
So moving on, I love this next one. This was Zorita, the snake dancer. This is I've seen videos of Zorita, and it's almost, she's like intoxicating to watch. However, the videos that I saw, she has like a bubble. She was started out as a bubble dancer, no?
Well, I think that was Sally Rand for the most part. Sally Rand did the bubble and the fan dancing. Right. And during the war, when she was really popular, there were all these postcards that servicemen would buy that they would then send to Sally saying, "Sally, we love your act. Please lose the fan."
You're right.
But everybody, you've ever seen those World War II movies where they always have a woman as kind of the mascot for the ship, and on the way to war you had to touch it on the way out to arm your guns.
Yes.
So she was big for that. Zorita was more of a local, although she was somewhat around the country. But Zorita, I got to say.
And this is the 30s, right?
Yeah.
Is this the 30s? Yeah.
And 1939 was, I think, the height of her era. And the thing that I find most interesting about Zorita was that I really do believe she was a precursor for women's rights. Zorita took no crap from anybody. When the police arrested her, which they frequently did, she stood up to them every time. She went to court. She defied their authority over them. Yeah, she was a tough lady. And really all she was doing was stripping. Mm-hmm. She wasn't engaged in prostitution per se.
She's no Kathy Willits.
But the thing with people, no, she's no Kathy Willits. But the thing that I think upset the people the most was when she would take her snake out for a walk. And there'd usually be someone to be there to take her picture. She'd arranged it. And the picture would show up on the front page of the newspaper, Life magazine, and all the prudes and the prurients, which, by the way, Miami's always had its prurients and its prudent people that were very much against any form of sexual activity. And that's been the struggle in Miami between these, lots of times they were church groups, but sometimes they were councils and committees that were set up to try and drive sex underground and make sure that nobody talked about it and that Miami was not seen as a center for sex. You could come here, but you couldn't have sex. You could bring your money if you're a tourist, but you couldn't have sex. And you couldn't drink, and you couldn't gamble. So what was the point?
Yeah. However, something like that drives it right up, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It drives up that
And I also think that it's interesting that she would call a photographer to be photographed with the snake, kind of what celebrities do now.
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely.
She was a precursor. I think she really was a precursor for what later came. Mm-hmm. And not to mention the fact she was an absolutely beautiful woman, and she was articulate. She could speak on her own behalf, and, she would say things like, well, my act is kind of corny, but people like it. She was self-deprecating. So this wasn't, kind of brassy, nasty, in-your-face person. Right. She just had a point of view. She felt she had a right to pursue it, and no one was going to stop her. So I think Zarita was a hero.
I love Zarita.
A heroine ahead of her time.
Mm-hmm. And she had an interesting prop.
The snake. Everywhere she went, she had that snake wrapped around her neck and carefully over her private parts.
It's like exotic and erotic.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. But you had the balls to say it. I didn't. Exactly.